when we treat people as if they are less than human because they don't have typical abilities, we deny the Christ within them, and we deny Christ within ourselves. It diminishes each of us. It diminishes our humanity.
Disability Access in the Church, the On Behalf of All initiative. That's our topic for today. Presvytera Melanie DiStefano is the resource developer at the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese Center for Family Care, which is leading the new On Behalf of All ministry towards the full inclusion of people with disabilities in parish life. Rachael Giannis is a parishioner at St. Stefanos Greek Orthodox Church in St. Petersburg, Florida, a pilot parish for the new accessibility initiatives. They are joining us today to discuss existing barriers for disabled individuals in parish life and how these problems are being and can be addressed. Welcome to both of you. Presvytera, let me start with you. Can you introduce the On Behalf of All initiative and share how it's designed to support greater inclusion in our parishes?
Yes, thanks, Father Chris. It's an honor to be here with you. The On Behalf of All grant was applied for and awarded in 2024 by the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese Office Center for Family Care. So we received the full amount of the grant proposal, which is $1.25 million over a 5-year period. And following Lilly Endowment Inc.'s parameters, this is meant to be for at least 12 congregations, targeting the age of birth to 12-year-olds. So it's focused on children in the church. Okay. And Lilly wanted proposals that would focus on enhancing the prayer and worship life of children intergenerationally, and especially children with disabilities. And because we've had going on 6 years of experience with the Fully Human ministry at the Center for Family Care, we've learned a lot about the needs in the church for making worship more accessible and community life more accessible for families who have children with disabilities. And so this grant opportunity was really a blessing and a godsend for us. As we go through some of the parameters, I just want to emphasize that 0 to 12-year-old age range was not our choice. It was within the grant parameters. But we believe that by focusing on the needs of children, we will also create accessibility for all people with disabilities in the church.
Well, obviously, it's an incredible grant and hopefully going to do miraculous things. Let's talk a little bit about the key barriers, visible, invisible, that disabled people face in Orthodox parishes today. How will this initiative help churches recognize and even address them?
Right. So there are both seen and unseen barriers in the church. And from what I've learned, just from my own personal experience, I'm a mom to a child who has disabilities and medically fragile child who is now no longer a child. He's 21 years old. But what I've learned personally, and also from the experiences of many people that I've interviewed and talked with in our ministry circles, that it is both a lack of infrastructure and there are some cultural barriers and misunderstandings. So churches are not by law required to meet ADA requirements on their facilities. Some do try to provide access, at least physical access, and meet those requirements. But because we are nonprofits, we're not always required. So even there are some that are grandfathered out. So older churches may not even have ramps to allow for wheelchair access, that kind of thing. So there definitely are structural physical barriers that people can't even get into facilities. That is one thing that is difficult. But I think the most painful, that first of all, we have to get in, and that is painful in and of itself. Mm-hmm. What I believe is most painful are the unseen and hidden barriers, the attitudes, the misunderstandings, the judgment often felt by families when maybe there are children who have neurodiverse, I want to say disability. So there's neurodiversity, whether it's ADHD or autism, and maybe behaviors are mistaken for bad parenting or not behaving. The child is misbehaving, labeling the child as a difficult child. So a lot of times families feel very much scrutinized. So some of those things need to be addressed. There's also a lot of cultural stigma just in the issue of sickness and illness and disability, especially in Greek communities. I have to say, ethnic communities tend to have shame surrounding.
Really?
At least it's still present. There's still issues where people feel shame over just being ill, feel shame, as if something led to some kind of sinful behavior led to the actual challenge that somebody's experiencing. And these are some misconceptions that people have that we hope to address as well. Part of the grant, which I really hope will help us address this, is a research piece. And so there will be a third-party researcher who will follow not only the 12 pilot parishes, but will do comprehensive research, pan-Orthodox research on attitudes toward disability, not just the barriers, what kind of accessibility do we have in our facilities and in our programming, but what are our beliefs about disability in the Orthodox Church?
Presvytera, this might seem like an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why is it essential for us to treat disabled Christians as full participants in church's life and the mission? How can we ensure that their voices guide the work ahead?
For the same reason, it's essential that we treat any Christian as a full participant in the life and mission of the church, because every person is created in the image of God. God dwells in each of us. So we all have limitations.
Mm-hmm.
When the priest senses, as you know, Father, when the priest senses the congregants in worship, it is because we are each living icons of Christ. We are created in God's image. Just because someone has a disability or even several disabilities doesn't mean that he or she does not have other abilities.
Mm-hmm.
We have all been endowed with gifts by our Creator. And I like to think of the quote from 1 Peter chapter 4, as each one has received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. So to sever anyone from the body of Christ because of a disability, or to not allow them to serve God with the gifts he intends for that person to use for his glory, leaves our church lacking. When we treat people as if they are less than human because they don't have typical abilities, we deny the Christ within them, and we deny Christ within ourselves. It diminishes each of us. It diminishes our humanity.
Let me turn now to you, Rachel. You were an attendee at the recent Gathered as One Body conference, which officially introduced the program and provided practical education and training for participants to bring back to their parishes. Can you talk a little bit about your experience there as a parish representative?
There's really one word that comes to mind for me, and it's profound. It was truly an incredible experience to be surrounded by so many people from all across the US who shared common challenges, who shared their personal stories, where we were able to explore barriers that exist. And I truly believe that as a parish, sometimes we get stuck in our silo of our parish and what our issues are, what present for us. And I really think having that opportunity to connect with others and just really hear the stories, it shined a light on the challenges that not only our parish face, but other parishes. And hearing the experiences of fellow Orthodox Christians who have had both positive experiences and negative experiences, and taking away from that, what can we do as a parish to really change how things look for us, and being able to kind of step back and really gather all of this information and explore what is our next step. What does that mean for us as a parish? But really, I can't say it enough. It was truly profound to just have that connection, that community, and that overall experience of just being together all as one and being able to take from that what we can do next.
Rachel, were there any moments of realization where you thought we could be doing this differently in our parish? What are some of the ways the training experience helped you reimagine what true accessibility and participation could look like in your community?
It's a fantastic question and something that stood out for me, and it comes from a personal place of being new to the Orthodox faith. It's not something I was raised with. I come from a social work background. I've always been very human focused, very focused on that. And the very first time I felt unequivocally welcome in a church was the day I walked into a Greek Orthodox church. And I can say that 100%. And to hear from individuals who were raised in the church or who found the faith and found not that same experience, it struck me. It's hard to comprehend how someone who never felt welcome in a church found that welcoming embrace, and to hear people who didn't have that experience. So taking from that, what can we do? I don't ever want anyone to feel that ever. That's the honest truth. And being able to come back to our parish and speak with our priest and say, what can we do? I know that the grant is tailored for 0 to 12 or birth to 12. What can we do differently? Because there are families that I know, speaking with parents, and they say, coming to church is the worst thing I can do. It is so stressful to bring my children, to get those, as Presvytera mentioned, those looks, the experiences of my child's acting out and I can't fully participate in the liturgy. And thinking about those families, how can we include them more? What does that look like for them? And, attending some of the workshops and getting ideas, a lot of it were small changes. There's the big changes of our church was built in the 60s and, our choir rectory does not have an elevator. Our solea does not have a ramp. There's so many of those kind of larger issues that we can troubleshoot or problem solve. But it's really the community side of how do we change attitudes? How do we help people feel welcome to walk into the church or have a kiddo that feels involved in liturgy when they sit in that pew? And I think for us, those practical things from liturgy bags to, as an usher, how do I greet these kiddos? How can they be involved and have parents feel welcome and know that it's okay? If there's someone that's an usher that can step in and help, or another parishioner who's lending a helping hand, I think there are smaller changes we as a parish can do that will ultimately make a difference, even if it makes a difference for one family. It's worth our time. And I don't mean to say worth our time, but it makes a difference. And when we came back, we met with our parish priest, Father Samson, and we said, what is the first thing we can do? What is the most impactful thing we can do right now? That isn't moving mountains, that isn't, revamping the entire sanctuary to make it more accessible. Because even our church, we don't have a crying room. We have a narthex and a sanctuary. What can we do right now to make a difference? And right out of the gate, it was, okay, we're making liturgy bags. We ordered the liturgy in Braille, which was something we do have parishioners that come, but can't fully participate because of that barrier. So it's looking at how can we make the biggest difference. And I think knowing this grant is a 5-year process, figuring out how we can all work together across the next 5 years.
We have to change the way we deal with things. And we usually become reactive to things. And it's time, and I'm very pleased with this, that we become proactive. Presvytera Melanie, how can our church cultivate a broader perspective on disability, understanding that it can affect parishioners at all ages and is not always visible?
That's a really good question. There are some disabilities that are evident from birth, others that are diagnosed in childhood if a child isn't meeting typical milestones, for example. But any of us can be in an accident, for example, and lose a limb. Or as we know, as I know, as I'm getting older, we have decreased function and motor skills, or maybe there are natural effects of aging, like vision loss. I never had to wear glasses until I was in my 40s. Hearing loss is common, arthritis, there are things that develop over time. There are some common invisible disabilities, including ADHD, low support need, autism. Some people refer to that as Asperger's. People with that kind of disability really can be misunderstood. They may not have physical features like those who have Down syndrome or Williams syndrome, so it's not as obvious that they might have a disability. So I think there's an issue here that when we don't understand that there could be hidden disabilities, we can really cause some damage to people by misjudging and holding children to certain standards of behavior without understanding what's going on in their bodies.
Are there any parishes or institutions you look to as success stories when forming your recommendations?
There are a lot of people doing a lot of great work. I've come across Orthodox parishes throughout the country that are pioneers in trying to make their parish life more accessible. There are a lot of people on the Fully Human Ministry Steering Committee who are engaging in disability ministry. For example, the Metropulos of Chicago has established efforts for over 2.5 decades in their Inclusion Awareness Sunday, where they have speakers on the topic. They ensure that American Sign Language translators are present in the liturgy to translate for deaf people. It's now called Team Belong, but the efforts are continuing to grow in the Chicago Metropolis. Archangel Michael in New York has the Challenge Liturgy has had it for years and is expanding it and into Sunday school programming, that they want to share this model with other parishes. Project Sam, Like a Daisy, this is all from Archangel Michael Parish in New York. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church has the St. Nicholas Ministry, and they really do a good job of a summer camp for families who have disabilities. They also have a lot of pre-made resources like picture schedules and social stories where you can take pictures of your priest, of your sanctuary, and make little stories for children to follow along what's happening during an anointing service when they're being anointed, so they're not as afraid, they can follow along, that type of thing. So there are resources out there. Summer Kennard has written wonderful books of Such is the Kingdom, An Accessible Church School, and then Faith Tree resources published Removing Barriers, a step-by-step guide to making your parish more accessible. So there are pockets of ministry efforts, but there still needs to be a lot of work done to make even those resources more accessible to people. People don't know about them. We want to make sure we could create models, and I'm really hoping that with these 12 pilot parishes, as we educate and support their efforts, we will come away with models we can share with other parishes.
Presvytera Melanie, let's leave with some practical guidance. What's one step clearly that both clergy and lay people can take to begin this kind of work? Where can they find support and resources?
First of all, I think for every Christian, the first step that would set everything else in order and open our hearts and minds to God's way of seeing these issues is to pray. A priest on one of our office's webinars once shared a prayer that he prays, and it really stuck with me. The prayer was, God, help me to see others as you see them and to love them as you love them. And help me to see myself as you see me and to love myself as you love me. So I think if we do that, our minds are more open to the beauty of God within every person. For clergy specifically, I would say don't see this as just one more thing on your plate, one more thing on your to-do list, because you are busy. You do have a lot of things that you're juggling in your ministries. I would say it is a lot of work, but including people with disabilities in the life of your community is holy work. It is pastoral work. It is the work that Christ has called you to and entrusted you with as a good shepherd who will make sure that every one of his sheep is cared for. I think sometimes if you don't have a personal experience of disability in your family or extended family, you might feel uncomfortable. Even priests, I mean, we're human beings, so even priests might feel discomfort around people with disabilities. So pray about that. God will open your heart. God will soften you. The more you talk to people with disabilities, the easier it gets. You will see there's nothing to be afraid of. You will learn different ways to communicate, and your people will watch you. They will watch you. You are the model. So how you interact with every person sets the stage with how they will interact with one another. So for lay people, I would say start by being friendly to families and persons with disabilities. It doesn't have to be over the top. A simple smile, good morning, sincere, welcoming attitudes go a really long way. Don't be afraid to ask just normal questions at coffee hour. How was your week? What kind of things do you like to do? Tell me something about yourself. It doesn't have to be, brain science. Just as you would talk to anyone else, talk to one another, talk to families with disabilities. Another thing to keep in mind is talk directly to the person with a disability. If somebody is in a wheelchair, for instance, it doesn't mean that they have a cognitive disability. So directing your questions directly to that person is important. If in fact somebody cannot communicate with words or has cognitive disabilities, they will still sense your sincerity if you direct your questions to them. And usually a caregiver is around who knows how to fill in the blanks. So I would say direct your attention to each person individually and just show respect. There are a lot of resources on the GoArch website. So there's a page called Autism Awareness that speak to these approaches in more detail. It's called What I Wish You Knew. It's a series. One is What I Wish You Knew to My Peers, What I Wish You Knew to My Fellow Parishioners, What I Wish You Knew to My Priest. So you can find that on GoArch Autism Awareness. We also have a Fully Human webpage where we house articles, podcasts, bi-monthly reflections, or I should say bi-weekly reflections based on scripture, saints, quotes surrounding the issues of disability. So the Fully Human webpage also houses the podcast that I have once a month, the Family Matter Fully Human edition, on topics of disability, to broaden our understanding of the lived experience of disabilities in the church.
Rachel, I'll come back to you for one final question. What are your hopes for the parish and community as you move forward on this journey toward inclusivity? And will you be sharing your experiences for others to learn from?
Yeah, so I would say our hopes and our dreams in the beginning is to raise awareness and to do those smaller things that we can do. And that's honestly, that's where we can begin. Come August, we're actually introducing our liturgy bags for the kiddos. We are having a Sunday for disability awareness, and it'll be the first time this has happened at our parish. So I think in many cases, even though it takes a little longer, sometimes those baby steps will help build upon a better foundation so we can really move forward. Our extra hopes, if you will, we actually sustained some damage after the hurricanes here in Florida, and it's an opportunity for our parish to look at our structure and see how we can make it more accessible. What can we do differently? So that's kind of the big picture, what I would hope for us in the coming years, but also in the St. Pete area and really the Pinellas Peninsula of this region, Tampa Bay area, there are so many Greek Orthodox and Pan-Orthodox churches. So I really truly believe the ability to connect with them and share our experience and help make a difference for all in our communities is really where we can get going. And it's really an exciting time to be able to bring everything we've learned and have the support of the Archdiocese and be able to move forward on this.
I would just like to add to Rachel's comment, because one of the things that's written into the grant is that in year 4 and 5, these 12 pilot parishes will adopt a sister parish and share what they've learned and model for the sister parish. So we hope to grow these things. So I'm glad that Rachel brought up the issue of sharing and modeling with other communities in her locale.
Yeah, really excited for it.
I hope and pray that the programs you have, all the things that you're doing, will continue to be that sort of break through the curtain and help others in the world that needs so much help at this time. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you, Father.